Hello all, and so I wanted to make a standalone quick video on Aristotle's non-contradiction, and of course to give it somewhat of context here, Aristotle is really now delving into metaphysics on his discussion of being in its categories, and really how truth statements, knowledge, and things of that nature. How is it possible, really? What are the conditions for it? And so essentially, Aristotle is asking, when we say something is, what is the relationship? What is this, discussion and this sort of reference of what something is? Essentially, he's kind of asking, in a way of, what is when we use such a term, when we are referencing and talking about something that's in existence, something that is, under the condition of being in this world. And Aristotle notices and systematizes for us how being is used in a variety of ways, and the different ways we think of it are really his categories of being. And so the different ways we think about being and how something is, the first real category for this is substances, and how we talk about things and then pin down the sort of essence of what that relationship is to the substance itself. And then we have other ways of going about this in his list of categories, such as in Metaphysics Book 4, where he really has a discussion about the affections of substances and their effects, and others because they are a process towards substance. And so you have things like destruction or privation, productive or generative, these substances or things, and how they become relativized in relationships, as well as having negation with that. And so basically he's systematizing all of the different relationships that substances have. And so it's important for Aristotle to point out that these aren't just merely categories of thought and our own experience of how we systematize being in the world, but it is actually a part of the category of being. This isn't just something that we speculate about with ideas, but this is the actual description of reality itself. And so in the categories of thought, we make these different distinctions, but for Aristotle in this case, these distinctions are real. And with that, it's going to be important to see how he really names this as the science of being, because this is reality for Aristotle. These distinctions, these differences in qualities that we use in language and in our own thinking, is how the world actually is itself. They are intertwined in such a way where the laws of being correspond to the principles and laws of thought, then this really leads up to where he starts with the law of non-contradiction, which is as follows. A cannot be both be and not be at the same time or in the same place in respect. It cannot be or not be at the same time in respect. And so he calls really this is his kind of kill shot, if you will, and is foundational for how thought is and truth statements. He calls this really the most certainty of principles regarding which it is impossible to be wrong for such a principle, because it is beyond hypothetical sense. And everyone must understand this to have knowledge of anything. So just as, again, with this text being the metaphysics, he's trying to pin down the very first principle of truthful statements. And so in order to have meaning, you have to comply really to the law of non-contradiction here. And so, as continued, a same attribute cannot be at the same time belong and not belong to a certain subject or object that it is describing in that same respect. To put it another way, you cannot be here and not be here at the same time. Even if, say you're a daydreamer or something, yeah, your body might be here, your mind might be elsewhere, but temporally, of course, in the bodily, you are, in the same time, in the same respect, and you cannot not be here, but also be here at the same time. Just as it is impossible for it to believe to be or not to be, so you can't have two contradictories that are both true at the same time. It can't be true or false at the same time. Therefore, it cannot both be at the same time. Can this principle really be demonstrated or given a proof? And Aristotle, positions this to, trying to prove this principle cannot be done in the usual positive demonstration. We must assume logic to actually prove it logically. And so, since we cannot do a positive proof, he's going to actually offer us the negative proof. And the starting point of the argument isn't something that, someone dissuaded or an opponent, if you will, says whether it is or it isn't. It is whether it has meaning or significance. And so if he means nothing, then he is not capable of reasoning if one grants this demonstration is actually possible. And so, for an example here, if my floor is wood, do we mean the floor is wood or not wood? Then it cannot be wood or not wood at the same time in the same respect, because we are already assuming that is the case in order to clarify the statement of whether or not it is wood or not. Or simply, in order to make the assertion of the floor not being wood, we would have to deny that it is not wood, and so it cannot be wood or not wood at the same time. If we do say it is both, then it has no real significance or meaning to it. You're just talking gibberish at that point. And so in order to say something meaningful, you have to ultimately assume the law of non-contradiction in his negative proof here. It must be assumed to argue or to deny it. And if the denial is self-contradictory, then we have to assume then that to deny it is actually truthful. And so the law of contradiction is either true or false if the assertion of the law of non-contradiction is false, but it turns out to be self-contradictory because it has to be assumed in order to deny it. So in order to deny this, you have to already participate in it. And for Aristotle, if you already have to participate in it in order to say it is not the case of contradiction, then that is the proof, really. The fact that you have to participate in it in order to actually argue against it, that makes it true for Aristotle. It isn't in the same way of a truthful proposition would be, but in the act of actually negating it, because then the only alternative is that it is true. And so all logic, all of our propositions are built in with the use of this communication and its use in language are ultimately built out of this certainty, this negative proof here of non-contradiction, which gives way as a first principle to all of our use and communication, whether it's knowledge, science, whatever application it could be used for. And so yeah, this is just a brief little video. I didn't really want to intertwine it with some of the other concepts of Aristotle's metaphysics here, and figured just having a small video on its own, since it is a famous argument that Aristotle gives and is rather important. And I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you for the next one.